Hey folks, welcome back. Glad you could be with me today. And today's video is going to be, well, yet again, just a little bit different. It's going to be, well, I'm going to make reference to some comments that I've gotten, and I'm going to try and show you a few things that we're working on and stuff like that. I'm going to talk a little bit about my last couple of videos because, well, I asked for help and I got some decent comments, and nothing that really stood out as far as helping me on my way, but I got some good stuff there. Well, I'm going to start with some of the comments I've gotten, because they're just, I don't take offense to these things. They don't really bother, but I just want to set the record straight. It was actually not the last video, but the one before. I called this guy a dummy. Actually, I called him a dummy twice, and then I called him a big dummy. And, well, actually, that's 100% accurate. Since he outweighs me about 5 to 1, that makes him big. And if you actually look up the definition of the word dumb or dummy, it means somebody that can't talk. Well, guess what? He can't talk. So calling him a big dummy is 100% accurate. And I also said immediately after that how smart this guy was. I told him he was a good boy, and I rubbed him on his head, all this stuff. As you can see, there's no lead on him right now, and he wants to be with me. So, and I mentioned in my comments something that I think is important to take note of is, because horses have a very minimal understanding of the English language, because they're not verbal creatures, and mostly the words that we think they actually understand, they simply connect to the tone that you make, the sound that you make, with a certain action, and it becomes a cue. So they don't actually understand the word. They just understand that when you say make a certain sound, they are supposed to do a certain thing. So not really. They don't understand the English language much. That's been a well-established fact, although I do believe that varies a little from horse to horse. From personal experience, I've had some that I'm sure they actually understood full sentences, not just words. She was not a normal horse. But that's okay. That's not my point. The point is, it really doesn't matter what words you use. It's the emotions behind those words that they understand. By the time you get a good look at that horse, it's already got your number. It knows you. It knows what you know, it knows what you don't know, and it knows your personality and character. And it's got your emotions radiate from you with an energy that I don't understand. I don't think most people actually do. But horses are very perceptive to it. And if you call them a big dummy, but you're doing it in an affectionate way, the energy that is coming from you is a positive energy, and the horse knows that. And they don't care what words you use, because they don't even know what the darn words mean. It means nothing to them. They know the energy and emotion behind the words, and that's all that matters to them. And this is one of those other things, too, that I mentioned in other videos, is how some people get hung up on certain words. They don't like certain phrases, certain terms. And there's probably a few I don't like much either, because I think they're confusing, if nothing else. But a single word really doesn't mean a darn thing. There's a saying, actions speak louder than words. Well, I'll pay attention to my actions, never mind the words I use. So, and that is about as far as we're going to go on that topic. If I call him a big dummy, don't get excited about it. I mean it well. And I really do like this horse. I have great respect for him. He's a very smart horse, and he's actually very sensitive, which leads me to another thing, because, well, in the last couple of videos, I said, I could use some help. Because this particular horse is quite unique. He's very, very different. And I have to do things differently. And I've started doing things a little different with him. Well, some of it kind of by accident, because I just started noticing that, well, a couple of the things that we were having trouble with was the disengage and a side pass. Two things that I standardly teach a horse. The side pass isn't super important. Real handy, though. Something you really want your horse to know. But Not super important, so if I had to, I could probably skip that one, but I don't think I'm going to have to. But the disengage is very important. That one actually takes the back end out of gear, as the name would imply. It disengages the propulsion system. So your horse is far less likely to bolt or anything. And not only does it put the horse in that state, but if it's willing to do it quite readily, it generally indicates its mindset. If your horse is not willing to do a disengage, which is not just the back end shuffling sideways, it's where the legs actually cross over one another. And when they're in that state, they can't suddenly launch forward. Very, very difficult. They have to uncross their legs and then take off. So unless they're fairly relaxed and comfortable with their environment and their handler and all that good stuff, they generally won't do it. So it's not only puts them in that state where you know that it's safe, or it stops them, slows them down, whatever. There's a lot of different reasons you can use it. But it is also, it tells you that they're in that state. Now in his case, when I tried to get a side pass or a disengage, the way I typically would do it is on lead. And the reason for that is during the disengage, you don't really want the front end moving much. You're concentrating on the back end. So by having it on lead, you can kind of control the front end and limit the movement so that you can encourage back end movement. That is why you do it. On the side pass, the reason for using a lead on that one is because you want the horse to move sideways. You don't want it going forward or backwards, which it can very easily do. And you want to simply eliminate the possibilities, because most horses will try one or the other or both before they go sideways. And so you want to just simply eliminate that possibility so the horse can only do the right thing. It makes life a lot simpler. Unfortunately with him, if I've got a lead on him and I'm holding it fairly close to the halter, he takes offense to that. And every time I try to ask him to move, he tries biting the hand that's holding the lead, or he grabs the lead, or we have a lot of problems. And so, excuse me for a minute, he's stealing my Lunge Whip. Well, my own horse is bad for that. I don't know, I keep thinking they want to lunge me because they think it's the thing to do because they see me doing it all the time. I don't know. Not sure. Anyhow, back to this one, as I was saying, every time I was holding the lead to either prevent the wrong movement or, that sort of thing, as soon as I would ask him to move sideways or the back end, he'd try and bite the hand holding the lead. Now he's back with me again. You see, he just tells you he likes me. He does. He likes me. He likes to be with me. I give him comfort. See, I'm not a jerk. I'm not a bad guy. And even if I call him a big dummy, he don't mind. He's not, horses aren't like humans. They don't take offense to everything that we do. In most cases, even if it's something that's somewhat undesirable, to them it's just information. It's not something to be offended by, which is one of the marvelous things about horses. Well, you excuse me for just a second. I'm going to go bring them back here and show you what we've been working on. Hopefully we can do this. I sure hope. Yeah, you, get over here. Come here. Thank you. Now, hope for far enough out from the camera. At this point, there's this distance that I get so far out I can't see the monitor well enough to tell whether or not we're where we need to be, but I think we're kind of where we need to be. Anyhow. So one of the things, the whole thing that we ended up doing here, as you can see, again, he came to me by asking. He's willing to be with me. Well, that tells you how I'm treating him. I'm being nice to the guy because he's a good boy. He's a good guy. And, that rubbing on him, telling me he's a good guy, I do that a lot. When the camera's not on, I do that a lot. You do not see that stuff. And yours often. Oh, I didn't ask you to go anywhere. Okay, that's good enough. I'll go with that. So, if I want that back end to move over, well, typically, like I said, I'd have a lead on them, and then I'd just take my fingertips and put a little pressure on the side. But I discovered, quite by accident, while working with them, that I don't need to lead on them for that. I can get a disengage If he's paying attention, which right now he's not, he's looking at the other end of the arena. Excuse me, sir. You gonna make me touch you? No, okay, good. Good man. Now, you see how sensitive he actually is. I didn't even have to touch him. I can also do the same thing using my Lunge Whip, and you see I got the string pulled back too, so it's just basically a short little stick is all it is. And I just point at that back end, and the back end moves over. Okay, so that was when we discovered, and I think I'm getting off camera again here, I can actually see myself on the monitor very lightly. Rather than moving him, I'm going to move the camera. Oh, he wants to be with me. Silly man. And although he's never ever threatened to kick or anything like that, I prefer not to stand right behind a horse. That's just it's one of those things I talk about, how you prevent accidents. Well, I prevent being kicked by not being in a place where I can get kicked, even though it's extremely unlikely that it's going to happen. Just don't be there. Simple as that. It's kind of like if you remember the movie The Karate Kid, which a lot of you won't remember because that was many years ago, but the karate instructor to the kid said, best way to no get hit is no be there. And that, as dumb as that sounds, that is probably the most sensible advice there is. Simply avoid the situation altogether. Oh yeah, go back to other things that, when I refer to him as a big dummy, I've got to tell you where that comes from. And most of you are not going to know this one. A few of you that are around my age, or maybe even older, might know this one. I remember a sitcom TV show from back in the 70s called Sanford and Son. And Fred Sanford, played by Red Fox, used to frequently refer to his son, who was quite a bit taller than him, as a big dummy. You know, he said, hey, you big dummy. Anyhow, so that's kind of where I got that from, and it's like I said, it is in no way intended as a derogatory thing. It's just an affectionate term I use, and so don't take words. Anyhow, back to the horse. He's lost interest and wandered off now. We'll have to get him back. There we go. Good man. I'd like your bum over. There we go. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Good guy. Yeah, good guy. You gonna come with me now? Good guy. Now, what I showed you for Disengage, that actually wasn't really good. He does much better. In fact, just off camera here, he just did it lovely, very wonderfully. But I thought, you know what? If he's that sensitive that I don't even have to touch him most of the time, because most of the time I can, like I said, I can just put my hand out or just point at him with the Lunge Whip, and the tail end moves over. You know, he's actually very good. He does it quite nicely sometimes. So I figured, well, if that's possible, maybe the whole side pass thing, I'm approaching it wrong too. Maybe because it's like every time I touch his side and ask him for a side pass, he'd get real upset with me and try biting my hand all the time. Now, I have never, ever tried to get a horse to do a side pass without a lead on, because it just doesn't make sense. It's because, well, one of the things that you know, it's a good principle to use, is that I believe anyhow, is set them up for success. And by having a lead on so they can't go forward or backward, you're really setting the horse up to succeed, because they can only do the right thing. So I thought, that makes sense. You put the lead on, and then the horse can't go forward or backward. It can only go sideways, and it learns real quick. Well, in most cases, that is true. In fact, every horse I've worked with, that has been true until now. This guy, no, that doesn't work. He gets right offended, tries biting me. So I thought, well, he disengages so well, what the heck, let's try it. I mean, why not? Doesn't make sense, shouldn't do it, but let's try it and see what happens. So kind of position ourselves the same as we normally would, right about here, in line with the front legs. I get my left hand up to block his head if it does come around and try and bite me. And my right hand is going to just lightly touch his side and ask him to take a step to the side. Now, I'm using one finger, you see, and he moved. Now, it wasn't very much, he only took a step, but he moved. And in the process, he did not try biting me. So I'm thinking, well, okay, maybe we're on to something here. Let's try it again, see if this works. No, you can't have my string. Now he is actually getting a little mouthy. He's trying to grab my, there we go. But what's really interesting, this is not the first time I've done this with him. I've done it a couple times just experimenting, and surprisingly, he almost always goes straight sideways. He doesn't go forward or back like every other horse. So, can you teach a horse to side pass without a lead? Maybe we can. So, unfortunately, this raises another little dilemma with him because, well, give me a second and I'll show you something else. Now, what I've got here right now is something you've probably seen before, because this is actually what I use for riding. And in his case, it's not going to actually be a whole lot different than what he's going to get used, or what's going to get used on him. Because his owner actually rides in a side pull. They don't use a bit, which is fine with me. I don't have an issue with that. And I've actually, that very halter or bridle, I've actually had it on him as a test too, because another one of the many things is he's not real good with his ears, so when you're slipping things over top of his ears, he sometimes gets a little touchy about that. Now, anyhow, this setup here with a rein on either side is what I consider to be much easier and my preferred way of working on the flexing, now practicing it. Now, he's actually, on a good day, quite sensitive. As you see, he responds pretty good. Unfortunately, when I bring the head towards me, quite often he tries to bite me. I don't know why he does that. And now, one of the other things we have taught him, even though we haven't ridden him yet, we've taught him to side up to the mounting block and stand there for me. So if I was to get on, there'd be no issue. Now, normally what we do in that scenario when we get to the mounting block, and if you go back in my videos, you'll see where I've actually talked about this and showed you how to use it, is you'd actually pick up a rein, get the head turned around before you get onto the horse, because with its head turned, it's very unlikely that it's going to move at all. Now, not entirely impossible, but it's not going to go bolting off while you got one foot in the stirrup and you haven't even swung your leg over yet. So that's one of the reasons that teaching a horse to flex and stand still while it's doing that is important, is because it's far less likely to take off while you're getting on, and particularly on a green horse, that's an important thing, because if that horse was to take off while I've got one foot in the stirrup and I haven't even swung my leg over yet, my foot might get stuck in the stirrup. That's highly likely to have happen. And next thing you know, you got this horse bolting, he's freaking out, he's young, he's green, he doesn't understand, he gets scared. He runs away with dragging this thing behind him that's basically, in his opinion, trying to attack him. He doesn't know any different. He just knows there's this thing on the ground running along beside him. He thinks it's trying to attack him. So he's trying to run away with it, and he's going to keep trying to run away with it. Meanwhile, you will be getting dragged to your death. So it is actually a case of, literally, a case of life and death. Now with him, being that is my favored way of doing things, and, well, I talk about safety, and that's a safety issue, huge safety issue, especially on a green horse. Although in his case, I don't think that's actually going to happen. Just his personality, I don't think that's likely to happen. But that's not the point. It could happen. And we don't want it to happen, and we don't want to take a chance on it happening. Now, we don't want to take a chance on that kind of thing happening. So I'd like to be able to do that. Even though, like I said, with him, the odds of it happening, highly unlikely. Just his personality. But we have got to make a decision because, well, let me explain what happens. When I get up on that mounting block, this thing here, you've seen it before. I just throw it on the ground and he'll stand in front of it for me. It's pretty good that way. When we get up on that mounting block and go to get on him, well, I've been practicing the flexing and standing still because I have found in the past that sometimes when the horse is standing at the mounting block, for some reason they respond differently, and when you turn their head, they do the same thing that they initially do on the ground, where they will start moving. They'll start turning. And so in the process of testing him to see if he would do that, we discovered that flexing his head towards me is a bad idea because every time I'd turn his head towards me, he'd try and bite me. Doing it on the off side, not so bad. Turn his head away from you, well, he responds well and he can't bite. That's why I got the reins like this, by the way, so I can do it either direction easily. Much more convenient. Anyhow, so I've got this bit of a dilemma as if I want to do what I normally do, which is have the horse's head flexed towards me while I'm getting on. I have to risk getting bit by him, which we don't want. And it's very difficult to deal with that sort of thing while trying to get onto the horse. At the same time, there's always these scenarios that you'll run into, and you can't always do the ideal thing. You know, like I said, I got a bit of a dilemma. I have to literally risk being dragged to my death because of the fact that I can't flex them without the risk of getting bit. When the day comes that we do get on them, and that day will come. Actually, I think it's probably going to be fairly soon, a lot sooner than I expected, because he has had the saddle on several times. I've had the saddle on him, and even prior to me working with him, he's had a saddle on him. He's actually had people on his back. I mean, all of this stuff is not foreign to him. But, you know, so like they said, that adds to that and his personality. I don't see that he's going to take off on me. I can probably get on him safely with his head straight. But, you know, why take the risk? So while, you know, see, he's already, I got to be careful. I really got to be careful. So we've actually considered one possibility, though, other than leaving his head straight, is maybe when we go on to get onto him, we're going to turn his head away, which is not something I normally do, but we might actually have to turn the head away from us when we get on. Maybe that's what we'll do. I don't know. But like I said, you know, being that he is, you know, these are just some of the things that we've been working on, some of the dilemmas that we've got. Nothing is real simple with this one. But, you know, like I said, you know, these are the things that make you a better horseman, is you have to kind of figure out, well, what can we do? What could be the problem? How can we do it differently? That sort of thing. Keep your nose off me, sir. Thank you. Nice guy. And you'll notice if you watch my videos a lot, I say please and thank you to the horses a lot. Honestly, I'm very sincere with the horses when it comes to respecting them. So there you go, folks. I just thought I'd address where we're at with this guy, the comments that people have made, where they think that I'm not being nice to them because I call them names. Well, actually, those names were 100% right and accurate, and they were not meant to be derogatory. So whatever, as far as that goes. And I just thought I'd show you some of the uniqueness of this horse that, and you've just, by the way, you're just seeing some of it. I'm not showing you all of it. There's more. Believe me, there's more. This is one of the most interesting and unique horses I've worked with, other than one of my own. I think this guy is probably the most unique. Not difficult per se, or a huge problem, although he had lots of issues that were creating problems for his owner. To me, they aren't really big problems, but they are to a lot of people, just because there are things that we find undesirable as humans. Oh well. But I just thought I'd bring you along on this one because, well, it's just kind of the fun we're having. Is I like to show you this stuff, and this is also goes along with some of the things I've said before too. How one size does not fit all. I can show you some great methods and techniques that will work probably 99% of the time, maybe 99 and a half. I don't know, maybe only 95, but whatever. Most of the time. But I want you to realize that there's always going to be this 1% or 0.1% or whatever. There's going to be these odd ones that are going to be unique, and they are going to present you with problems. We do not live in a perfect world. You have to understand that. We don't live in a perfect world. That you're going to have these challenges where you're going to have to deal with a horse or a problem in your own horse that is just nobody has an answer to it. And it's interesting because I watch other horsemen's videos frequently because I'm always trying to learn. And I've watched some very good guys, very talented, and I find it very interesting that when it comes to stuff like this, I can't find a video on it. There's one guy in particular that works largely with problem horses of various kinds. None of them like this. Nothing like this. I mean, even the last one that video that I watched, he was working with a horse that would kick and bite and things like that. And I'd rather work with that one. It would be much easier. I don't know. It's just, many of the standard ways of doing things work with those horses that he's working with. He doesn't seem to, well, maybe he just doesn't film them. I don't know. Because, I hesitate to take the time to film things when I'm working with this one. There's a lot, like I say, you don't get to see the whole picture because there's a lot of stuff I don't film because of the fact he is so unique. I have to give him my undivided attention when I'm working with him, to make things work, to figure out what does and doesn't work, and for my own safety. I don't have a cameraman. If I had a cameraman, it'd be a different story. I could probably have somebody following me around with a camera. But I can't be constantly worrying about whether or not I'm in view of the camera and that sort of thing, and explaining what I'm doing the whole time. It's not that simple. I have to be paying attention to the horse. Somebody actually did mention doing voiceovers for my videos, and that is a possibility, but I would still have the problem with this particular camera. It's not a wide angle lens. My GoPro, which is a wider angle lens, gives you a distorted vision because it's got what they call a fisheye lens, which your straight lines are no longer straight, they're curved and things like that. And yeah, you get the view, but unfortunately things aren't, they're a little distorted. And it would look like I'm a lot further away than I am even when I'm up close. So you don't get a good view of things. Sorry, I had to go take my lead off the horse. He was getting tangled up in it. Silly boy, stuck his foot through it. Well, he dropped his head and then he stuck his foot through. Oh, anyhow. It's one of those things. That's why I say you don't take your eyes off the horse. You got to be paying attention all the time because you never know what's going to happen, especially with these rope halters. They're wonderful training tools. They're great. But you don't ever take your eyes off a horse when they got a rope halter on. Please don't ever take your eyes off a horse with a rope halter on. And if you're trailering a horse, don't use a rope halter. I don't like web halters, but in a case of a trailer, I will absolutely use one because they're safer, because there's a better chance if something goes wrong and the horse gets caught on something, they'll break. If they get hooked on something, rather than having things go really bad, because horses actually have died from halters, getting hooked on things. So it's never a good idea to leave a halter on a horse at any time if you can avoid it, even a web halter. And these rope halters, absolutely not. Never, ever, ever leave a rope halter on a horse unattended. That is really a very, very dangerous thing to do. So back to the voiceover thing. In order to do that, because somebody suggested, and I actually did try it once, but it didn't work very well at all, especially if I mix it with some live audio. The difference in the sound quality is just completely different. This unit is actually fairly good. It's not a cheap one either. And that's where, again, it runs into problems, because I don't make any money on this. And if I have to buy another mic to be able to do voiceovers of any decent quality, we're looking at spending lots more money. Just a jerk. Yeah, you're a jerk. Yeah, see, I'm calling him a jerk now. You're a jerk. I like you. There, I called him a jerk. What do you think of that? No. Like I said, it's not the words you use, it's the emotions. He knows I like him. Yeah? And I'm rubbing on him. And I'm using a tone of voice and an emotion that is positive. So it doesn't matter if I call him a jerk. He doesn't care. It doesn't bother him one little bit. As you can see. Hey, you're a jerk. You know that? Did you know that? You're a jerk. Yeah, okay. He's horribly offended now. Can't you tell? See how offended he looks? Okay, I'm being sarcastic. So, back to the voiceover thing. Like I said, I've tried it. It sounded horrible. To do it half decent would require spending a fair bit of money on a decent mic that would match the sound quality of this one. And then I've got to match the number of words that I say to the video length. And it's actually a fair bit of work. You know, I explained that, and somebody suggested that in one of the comments, and I explained myself a bit on that one. And it's actually a fair bit of work doing voiceovers. It's good sometimes. It can be good. If you do it right, it's great, but it costs money, and it's actually a fair bit of work. So I'm not going to do that. So anyhow, I think we've done enough for one day here. I hope you get a little bit out of this. My big dummy here is a nice guy, and he's a very smart and very sensitive horse. I think I just showed you how sensitive he was. We are approaching things extremely different, and unfortunately, because of how different we have to do things, I may actually end up doing something that might be risking my life. Don't like to do that, and that's one of the things I try to emphasize all the time, is how to do things safely so that you don't risk injuries. But unfortunately, with this particular horse, I might have to do something that is potentially dangerous. So there you go, folks. A little bit on our progress, a little bit on how unique he is, a little bit on words and do they really matter at all. Yeah, let's not worry about words, worry about actions. Like I said, actions speak louder than words. So worry about your actions. Worry about how you treat that horse. Be nice to that horse. Be sensitive to the horse. Be understanding. Be observant. Be all the good things that the horse needs. And don't even worry about what you call it. Hey, Abercrombie. Have a good day.